on the 2021 draft this week. There's a few things have happened. All the underclassmen declared. Jalen Waddle, Justin Fields, they both entered the draft. Ohio State had a weird day where it's like 3 declared and 3 are staying. Reggie Robertson at SMU staying for his senior year for the Mustangs as well. And obviously, there's mock drafts are starting to crop up as well. And this week is Senior Bowl week down in Mobile, Alabama. But this week, we're going to look at a crop of in a position which is as strong as it's been for a few years, and that's the quarterbacks. So 2021, Ben, has long been the year of Trev, but this first round could be chock full of quarterbacks this year, couldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, without giving too much away, sort of going into it, I wasn't 100% sure whether Lawrence was going to be like the undoubted QB1, and because there was discussion after the playoff game with Ohio State whether Fields could go ahead, but there's maybe 3 tiers of talent, and Lawrence is by himself, but behind that there's some really good players, and I think we'll go into it. I think it gets interesting after Lawrence, because I do think there's going to be a real difference of opinion on the order that the next group of guys go.
Yeah, but on Trevor Lawrence, we're going to probably spend more time on the other one because everyone else is going to spend all the inches and seconds and minutes on him over the next few months. He is just ridiculously, he's oven ready, isn't he? He's the jump is going to be minuscule for him from Clemson to probably the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, I mean, there was probably 8 or 9, maybe 10 plays that like turned me into Gary Neville. Like it's just had me like purring at the screen. He's just got everything. He's just got absolutely everything that you'd want from him. And then you see him take off and do stuff with his legs as well. It's not even like you can even sort of chill out when he's because he's got the option to bust a big long run as well. So he just looks like a complete talent that's going to pretty much. I don't think the Jaguars are that bad anyway. I'm not sure the roster's actually that bad. So I think it's the kind of thing that could transform them into a really competitive team really quickly.
Yeah, we've said on the regular programming on the Ped Pod that it's really annoying that the Seahawks have got the AFC South next year when they've got Trevor Lawrence, the new quarterback in Indy. Well, whatever the hell's happening in Houston, and Derrick Henry. So it's not ideal. But yeah, Trevor Lawrence is as good as I've seen come in for. I mean, like he's as ready as Andrew Luck was. He's as like it. I mean, the decision if he'd have stayed in Clemson would have been incredible to watch the reaction to. But yeah, he's QB1. He's going to be going to Jacksonville, and DJ Chark is probably the happiest man in America at the minute with all that. After him, as we said, this is where the debate really starts. I'll go through mine, and then I think yours is. Well, no, yours is different to mine, but I think my QB2, Ben, is the guy who beat Trevor Lawrence in that college football playoff about 6 weeks ago at Ohio State, Justin Fields. I mean, Justin Fields had good priors, I think, because he was on that Netflix series QB1 when he was in high school, going to Georgia. And then obviously Georgia, for some reason, picked Jake Fromm over him. Then he transferred to Ohio State and took them to the title game until they faced a machine that is Nick Saban's Alabama. But I love watching Justin Fields. He's everything is just really, really fluid. The arm is pretty good. He's someone who just makes plays in any which way. He's I think he's closer to Lawrence than he's probably going to go in April. But I think he has an equally as big upside because I think he's only started 2 years in college. He's got much more to much more room to grow and much less stuff on tape. I just really think he is QB2, and he whoever gets him probably at the back end of that top 10 is going to be incredibly fortunate, I think, because he seems to be somewhat lost in the conversation, even though he's 3 weeks removed from a title game, Ben.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if he gets as far as the back end of the top 10. I could still see him going. There's still a good chance that the Jets would take him at number 2. My main issues with him is when you watch his tape, a lot of it is first read stuff. Like the way that offense is set up, it appears that it's first read. If that's not there, then he's looking to take off. And how quickly that can translate into the NFL, I would probably quite like to see him go somewhere where there's a bridge quarterback in there just to give a little bit more time. I don't see him quite as week one throwing for. I could see Lawrence coming in week one and throwing for 350 yards, a few touchdowns. I don't really see that as much with Fields. Like you say, the upside is extraordinary with him. He's got, he's got the arm talent to make most throws. It's probably unfair, but I know he's a much better player than Haskins, but there is just that little crossover of how much the offense is doing for him. There's a few times where he just sort of stares down receivers, I think, and makes some pretty odd decisions. But then you watch him in other games against Clemson, he looked otherworldly. So he's, as you say, he's definitely a top 10 talent. Mine's just personal preference of why he wouldn't be QB2. I'd have no major issue with him going as the second quarterback off the board.
Yeah. Another thing with Fields, and I think it helps with the hire that the Jets have made for him going to, is Salah's experience of working with Shanahan in San Francisco, because like they just seem to have a way, that whole system, and he's been there for 2.5 years with Shanahan, of just making the most of the quarterback, because they don't have a very good quarterback in San Francisco at the minute. Fields is better than the quarterback in San Francisco at the minute. I just think if they can get him into that system, and with LaFleur running the plays in New York, I think that is almost I think there or Atlanta would be the perfect spot if with Arthur Smith, and if Matt Ryan's just like say, look, like to do like an Alex Smith Mahomes situation with Matt Ryan, which is somewhat unfair, Matt Ryan, what he's done at Atlanta, but I think that would be the second best landing spot for Fields, because I just think he's really, 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 really good. QB3 for me is the guy I think is your QB2, and the Fields, as you say, there is tiers to this. It's Lawrence and then these two, I think, just after him, and there's not much in it. Zach Wilson at BYU. I mean, you talk about quarterbacks coming out of Ohio State. The only quarterback really to come out of BYU is Steve Young, and that was 25 years ago. So, what's your? I know Wilson's your guy for the Jets. He's Daniel Jeremiah's guy for the Jets, and his latest mark, which we'll get into a bit later. But what's QB2 next after Lawrence for you with the BYU QB?
Yeah, I just think when you're looking at drafting this high, you just need to look at things that they do at an elite level. And I just think some of the stuff he does is just when a play breaks down, he just thrives. I'm not comparing him to this person, because obviously there's no one that you can compare him to. But when you watch some of the throws he makes and the arm angles that he can generate, he has got a little Mahomesian to him in terms of the way, because he can manipulate his arms in so many different directions that he can almost go under a defensive lineman, and just his ability when the pocket collapses to still be able to extend plays, and then he's got the arm talent to be thrown outside the numbers, on a pretty regular basis. There was one throw, I can't remember who it was against, but the pocket's collapsed. He's stepped into he sort of managed to navigate the pocket, and he's on his front foot. He's got no base, and he throws it 50 yards, throws an absolute dime 50 yards. And it's stuff that you just couldn't possibly teach. And I just think whoever gets him is going to get a ridiculous talent.
Yeah, but I think he's really decisive. I think he does have I think he has a stronger arm than Fields, but and he's probably a more physical runner. Although obviously Fields got lit up in that Clemson game last month, but yeah, I think Wilson is really really good. I think he is. If he goes to the Jets, it would not be a surprise, but I, I I don't know. I don't think it really translates because we see where, but I think there's the teams and the defenses that Wilson played compared to what Justin Fields played in 2 years at Ohio State. I think that may be the biggest thing because he's used to this NFL ready almost competition playing Michigan, Alabama, Clemson 2 years. BYU kind of skit and skirt around certain games as Washington UW found this year when they basically refused to play on. But no, I think Wilson is going to be is going to be the guy for whoever drafts him. He's going to be a good player, but there's I'm, I'm not too sure why I prefer Fields, but I think it's a debate which is going to be the main thing after this draft season. I think because obviously Lawrence is assured to be number one, and the Fields Wilson thing is going to be like the Deshaun Mahomes kind of deal. I think the person that Wilson reminds me of most watching him is pre knee injury Carson Wentz because he's so decisive. He just pings it in there just with probably, as you say, on that 50-yard bomb, probably better deep ball accuracy than Wentz had. But like how physically is he as a runner, how comfortable he is throwing on the move, both left and right. It just kind of looks like Wentz did before he got injured 2-3 years ago, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, on the opposition, I mean, you can see it sometimes because I think he, at the level he's been playing at, he thinks he can pretty much beat any defense that he's come up against. So he'll take on anything. So you see quite a lot of throws that he'll make, and you think in the NFL that's probably going to get picked off. And at the level he's been playing off, it might have just been a pass break or incomplete, but he's going to have to learn pretty quickly that it's always a different ball game when he comes into the NFL. But I just think the actual sort of when you go down and look at his physical traits, I think he's got enough that it's going to translate once he sort of reins in a little bit of that over aggressiveness and sort of maybe a bit arrogance.
Yeah. I think that's a fair, but it is going to be fun to watch. It is a shame that the combine isn't happening. You're not going to see any fully fledged draft processes for these two. This group really, but Fields and Wilson is going to be it's going to be interesting to watch. See what teams prefer on the last weekend in April. Then I think that is it. I don't know if you agree, Ben, but that's probably it for that tier. Second tier, isn't it? And then there's another tier of quarterbacks after that. I mean, Trey Lance is probably my favorite of the whole bunch, to be fair, because he's just so effortless. But he's only
I wouldn't have any issue. I wouldn't have any issue with Lance also going in the top 10. I think any of the other quarterbacks going in the top 10 would be a travesty. But I think I don't think it would be a terrible pick if someone like Carolina at 8 or something picked Lance. I think it.
Yeah, I think Lance is the one where he needs a year to sit down. I mean, he might not do but he's only had 1 year. He only threw one interception. He had 1 year and one game against Central Arkansas this year because North Dakota State season starts next weekend, I think, and obviously he's already declared for the draft. But I love watching Trey Lance. I think you've seen on my Twitter last year or so the Trey Hive try and pick up steam for that. He's so good, and he's not. This is probably unfair on him. It reminds me so much of watching Wilson at Wisconsin and NC State. It is just everything is so effortless. Again, like Wilson, the opposition is not up to the NFL level, but again with Wentz, he went from North Dakota State and did pretty well for the first couple of years of his career. So it is a transition which has been made more recently than BYU and Ohio State. But yeah, I like I know I've just put Fields to them, but again, this is a guy that the Falcons could do a lot worse than just pinning behind Matt Ryan for a year, because I think if it clicks with Trey Lance, then he could really win a lot of games on Sundays, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of his actual quarterbacking, he processes really quickly, I think. You can see the way that he goes through his reads, and as you said, I think he probably found it too easy at the level he was playing at, but that was the level he was playing at. So, I mean, this is by no means his sort of top attribute, but when you see him run with the ball, he runs over people. He absolutely like trucks secondary players when he gets there. He's not even like an elusive runner like someone like Kyler Murray, where he's going to make people miss. He runs over people, and he just looks incredible when he's got the ball in his hands as well.
Yeah, the word I wrote is dominant with Trey Lance, because I mean I think it was 25 touchdowns and 1 interception in 2019 for North Dakota State at their level in their conference are the best. I think they've won the national title for that division like 4 or 5 years on the trot. So like he's quite heavily he's helped quite a lot. But yeah, I there's a very good. I love Patrick Mahomes, who's at Texas Tech. I talked to Adam Ritchie before every podcast when he was at Texas Tech, just saying this guy is going to be unbelievable, and I have the same kind of under the radar vibes of him, and that kind of maybe even that kind of 25, 30 team move up to the top 10, top 12 could happen again with this guy, because again, I think he's someone who could suffer a little bit from the lack of the usual draft process, the combine and all that. But if he gets on the field, he gets in the right situation, he could be a player to watch in the next couple of years. And then for me, Ben, there is quite a large gap after Trey Lance.
Yeah, there's a significant gap. Like I said, I think any of those guys that we've mentioned, there's absolutely no issue with a team in the top 10, the top 15. I think after that, I consider the rest would all be a reach pretty much in the first round. There's a couple that you could probably argue could go at the back end of the first round, but I wouldn't be looking at any of these above like 26, 27, and maybe even just sit and wait for the second day. Yeah,
I agree. Well, who's next for you? Cube, what's that? Number 5 on your quarterback list. Who's next?
It would probably be Kellen Mond, I think, if I had to. But that's more because I'm not a fan of the other guys. I think all of the ones that we've got left, I weren't overly impressed with. But you look at Kellen Mond, and again, when you're looking at traits, he looks like he can zip in passes. He's got a good arm. His footwork just didn't look like it would stand up in the NFL. His sort of 4th and 5th steps on his dropbacks are horrible, and it just would scare me quite a lot unless you could clean that up pretty quickly. Yeah. But that looked sort of really not good, and that just stood out to me straight away watching him.
I think there's no quarterback in this group who is either going to burn out the league in 2 or 3 years or be a Pro Bowler within 2 than Kellen Mond, because he has the Kaepernick, it's like all or nothing kind of vibe to him. I think, you're right. He has issues. There's a reason he's not in the conversation at the top end, but I don't know. There's just something when you watch him move around, when you watch, as you say, just gun-in throws, there is something with him which kind of just will get a team to fall for him and pick him probably on the edge, on the outskirts of the top 50, maybe that top 50, 75 range is probably where he's going to go, do you think?
I just think he's another that's going to be really hurt by having no combine, because he's the type of player where if he tested out really well and looks good in Indy, then he's the kind of player that I think could move up draft boards pretty quickly. So I think he's going to probably suffer. I'd be surprised if he's as late as 75. I would be very much expecting him to go probably at the top of the second, I think.
Yeah. I think for me, he's probably is my QB5, but there is a hefty gap between 4 and 5 for me. I think Mac Jones is going to be drafted far, far too early. But I think his tape with the track team we talked about last time on here that he had helped him. But he seems like he's having a good week in Mobile. That is going to go a long way with NFL teams for reasons I don't think I'll ever understand. But he's going to be drafted. I just don't see it. Like, if my team drafted Mac Jones, or if they drafted Kellen Mond, my excitement levels would be different, a lot different. But I think like Mac Jones would be drafted before Kellen Mond, which is, I think that's probably a mistake.
Yeah, I think, considering everything we've said, I still think Mac Jones will go in the first round, and I think he's going to be going much higher than he should. I think he might even go like top 15, top 20, something like that. Particularly with this Pro Bowl, I just feel like people are going to fall in love with him. As a fan of a franchise that fell in love with someone, not Pro Bowl, sorry, Senior Bowl, someone that fell in love with someone's performance at a Senior Bowl and ended up drafting Daniel Jones at 6. I still am adamant that that's not a huge reach. I think he was probably like a 10 or 11, but I don't think Jones is a first round. I don't think Mac Jones is a first round talent for me.
No.
I think he'll be serviceable. I think in a couple of years you'll probably be looking at him as a a serviceable backup, I think.
Yeah, well, I just think the quarterback play is changing. So, I mean, we saw it this last weekend with the title games. Obviously, you have Rodgers and Brady, which is like the older guy, the late 30s, early 40s quarterbacks. Then you saw later that night the youth movement with Mahomes and Josh Allen. And the way those games were played by those quarterbacks were completely different. But I think the later game is more what we're going to see in the next couple of years. And I just don't see Mac Jones being able to do that on a consistent basis to get his team, unless he falls in the perfect situation with an unbelievable coach, consistently. And that's why I think I would have Mond above Mac Jones. To be fair, I think I would be looking at Shane Buechele at SMU before Mac Jones, because I think Buechele has just been unbelievable for the SMU Mustangs. He led them to their first 10-win season since 1984 in 2019. So I think Mac Jones is going to be overdrafted. I think Kyle Trask is going to be overdrafted just because of the stage he played on down in Florida. But if you give me Buechele, Mond, or even Jamie Newman, who didn't play after transferring to Georgia from Wake Forest and opted out, I think I'll be way more content and assured. At least then you're drafting upside rather than the stage he played on in college, Ben.
Yeah. I mean, as you've said, when you look at the first, when you look at those first 4 QBs that we've mentioned, they're all pretty modern in their style, aren't they? They're all capable of playing, when of still completing plays when it's break down. And I look at someone like Mac Jones, and I think exactly the same about Trask, who we'll come on to shortly. I feel like they're nice pocket passers, but I just don't, like you say, it's not an exciting. I don't see that there's massive upside on them, because they do what they do well. But I feel like it's going to have to be. They're both, to me, they would both like really stand out as like scheme quarterbacks. And if you put them in a nice, as you say, with a good coach and everything's set up well for them, I think they'll be okay. But they don't look like the kind of players to me that are ever going to sort of drag a middling team to any sort of success.
Yeah, I agree. So you mentioned Kyle Trask. I've got him at QB6 after Mond and Mac Jones. You watched him more than I did. What's your takeaways from the Florida QB?
So my first note that I made in all capitals and in bold was Kyle Pitts, because I ended after watching Trask for about 6 minutes, I ended up watching Carl Pitts for about 30. So that was pretty much how it. A lot of the stuff on Trask's highlights, they were okay passes caught by a superhuman, and that's. I think the last episode I said I didn't want the Giants to go anywhere near Carl Pitts. I'm now happy to trade up to the second pick and take him. But yeah, to me, as I've said about Trask, he's okay. I think he gets sometimes his processing just looks horrendous, and he just gets stuck on one receiver, won't move off them, and everything has to be perfectly set up. He has to have a nice clean pocket. Yep. As I've said, he has to have what I think will be a all-pro tight end receiver freak in running routes for him. And yeah, he's another way I think his ceiling is one of the bottom 5 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. And I think his probable landing spot is going to be a backup.
Yeah, I don't see it. I think you're right. Kyle Pitts is. I think even the other I can't remember the other tight end's name. I think he bailed him out. They had the incredible freshman receiver got injured late on in the season as well. Before they kind of bailed him out, and yeah, again he had a decent coach in Dan Mullen, and it kind of just helped him quite a bit. I think. Again, what the bits I've seen, I haven't clicked a Kyle Trask video. I've clicked a Kyle Pitts video and watched that. I think but again, there's a reason why Kyle Trask and Mac Jones are in this conversation. Probably going to be drafted ahead of Kellen Mond. It will just take a quick Google image search to figure out why that is as well. But yeah, I don't see it with. I think Mac Jones is going to be better than Kyle Trask.
Yeah. I think we're onto another category now for the next 2 people that we're going to discuss. Well, yeah. I think the last one is probably in a category of his own.
To be fair, I only got one more, and it's basically just one word. Yeah. So at the Senior Bowl this week, there is a lot of chat about Matt Jones. Devontae Smith weirdly didn't want to be measured and weighed, which okay. There's a few injuries. The wide receivers are going ham on the DBs. The guy from Wisconsin, Whitewater, the O-lineman Mayniers, I think his name is just dominating. Yeah. But also there's a lot of chat, I think from Brian Flores was talking about him. The Notre Dame quarterback, Ian Book, Ben. The one word I had, like you had Kyle Pitt underlined and highlighted and italicized. I had excruciating italicized and bold in mine because his arm strength isn't there. There's just nothing going on with his deep ball. I mean, if you put him with Tyreek Hill and McCole Hardman, they would be asking for trades after the second game, I think. You said that Justin Fields, if Justin Fields for you locks onto his first read, heaven knows what you can call what Ian Book does. He doesn't seem to have any sense of where the rushes are coming from. He doesn't really, like you said with Wilson, he moves up and steps up or steps away and gets out of the pocket. Ian Book just kind of just stands there. If you're a receiver which thrives, like we saw Tyreek Hill run 71 yards on like a 4-yard pass. That ain't happening with Ian Book because he's not going to throw his receivers open. He's going to run the risk of interceptions far more often than you'd be comfortable with. I mean, there's talk of him going in like late second, early third round. If you're drafting Ian Book for anything more than my process for watching these guys was Ian Book to Zach Wilson, and it was like watching a completely different game of a different sport, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, so you had your first note as excruciating. Mine was probably not as good vocabulary. I went for not good. So similar sentiments.
So when there's a Pro Bowler.
There was a couple of plays where there's receivers just running in absolute like college levels of space, and he's just staring at them, and he's staring at them, and he's staring at them, and he's staring at them, and then he gets sacked. And they might have been in 20 yards of have 20 yards of separation. I'm just there's a couple of nice throws he makes when you watch the highlight packages put together by his family, probably. And aside from that, I've put if you were considering it before day 3, then don't. What was my because even if you're saying he as a backup, I'm not even sure he's that good. He doesn't even look like he's got that to me.
No.
You know, it reminds me a few years ago when the Giants drafted Carl Loletta, and because he got the MVP in the Senior Bowl, and he's now on his 3rd team, and I think it looks that sort of gig to me.
Yeah, I just don't see it. I think again he's going to be helped by the big school he played at and played. I mean, yeah, he beat Clemson, but I mean Clemson didn't have our Trev that night, and when they did have our Trev, it was a boat race. But yeah, anyone else? Like for me, after that, I think it is Bouchel. What's your rankings of all those guys as it stands?
The ones we've discussed, yeah.
Yeah. So what's like your top 7 or 8, whoever many we got?
Yeah, so for me it'd be Lawrence, Wilson, Fields, Lance, Mond, Trask, me, my dog, next door neighbour, and then Ian Book. Ian Book as well, like Ian Book. Jesus.
So Draft Tech has Ian Book as the 297th ranked player in this draft, which is probably about right. Yeah. So I think for me, I've got Lawrence, Fields, Wilson, Trey Lance, and a rather large gap. Then Matt Jones, Kellen Mond, Shane Bouchel, Jamie Newman, Kyle Trask, and then I mean even someone like Sam Ehlinger.
From Texas.
I don't think he's that good, but I think he's better than Ian Book.
Yeah.
I kind of wasted 12 minutes watching 15, 20 minutes watching Book. So, but yeah, I think like there is definitely 3 or 4 levels to this. The gap is largest between Lance and then Jones and Kellen Mond, and then probably again to Bouchel and Newman and Trask as well. But yeah, the one player I'll be interested to see where he lands is someone like Shane Bouchel, because he was at Texas, he transferred to SMU, he had 2 really good years. I think he won 19 games, 18 games maybe at SMU, had James Prochet and this year Reggie Robertson as well. So that could be someone to interest me. This elsewhere though, there's we're probably going to be horrendously wrong. We're probably Ian Book's going to be a perennial Pro Bowler in the Super Bowl.
No, he won't.
Brady, but
he won't.
No. There is a bit of talk though this week that with the Senior Bowl, it is a pretty hefty, pretty impressive crop though, isn't it? All things considered, especially at the top end of it.
Yeah, I think the first few guys are really like franchise changing talents, and then I'm just really interested to see which direction. I'll just really hope someone like Trey Lance or Zach Wilson doesn't drop to the Patriots at 15, because I think that's just start again and recycle for the next 15 years. That's worst case scenario for the entire NFL if one of those two drop. If Matt Jones goes there, then we'll have an opportunity to see how good he actually is. But I think if the other two go there, then it's see you later.
Yeah. So yeah, one of the things that's happened, Senior Bowl is this weekend. I think they are playing a game, aren't they? So, and like the East-West game last week. So Daniel Jeremiah is probably the top NFL, definitely the top guy on NFL.com, but one of the best. I don't know what that was. So Daniel Jeremiah is one of the best guys, best draft and analysts in the game. He's on NFL.com. He posted his first mock about a week or so ago. Do you want to quickly go through that? Some of the things that popped up to you, Ben. Obviously, you went Lawrence Wilson and Jamar Chase to the Dolphins. Obviously, we lauded up Devontae Smith, possibly a bit too much because, yeah, Jamar Chase does exist, but Lawrence Wilson. That's how you think it will go in a couple of months as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's how I would. That's how I would draft it if I was picking. And like I say, I think between Wilson and Fields, I don't think there's a lot in there. I think if you're getting where does Fields actually go in the end?
Well, Fields
ends up going
after,
7 to Detroit.
Yeah.
So he's got a chance to Atlanta
at 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I like Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, Bengals
I
going
would be happy with
Rashawn.
Jalen Waddle to the Giants.
Yeah, Rashawn Slater, the guy you mentioned last time, goes before Penei Sewell, whatever, from Oregon. I mean, Sewell is, for me, a year ago, was the surest top 3, maybe even top 1 pick in the group. And then here we have Northwestern tackle going before him to help the Bengals. Yeah, you got Jalen Waddle for your guys. I mean, he's put Kyle Pitts to the San Francisco 49ers. I would, again, request realignment if that happened. Putting Pitts with Kittle, Samuel, Ayuk, and whatever quarterback they end up with this offseason is rather unfair and unjust when the Seahawks have a unknown OC and a quarterback who needs a bit of a bounce back, Ben.
Yeah, I think that would be bad news for all concerned. They've got Michael Parsons going to the Patriots at 15. I think we could see a bit of a slide on him if he's superb, but if these allegations have got anything to it, I think it's put a lot of teams off, and I can see him sliding down and someone gets deal at the back end of that first round.
Yeah. He's got JT Hall. Karen.
Yeah, who's he got the linebacker from Notre Dame going to? The Jeremiah Owusu. I think he's got him going about 17. I really like him.
Yeah, the Raiders. Jeremiah Owusu Koromoa.
Yeah.
He's going to the Raiders. A dynamic athlete at the second level, Jeremiah says. And then, Kadarius Toney is a guy who I haven't really watched much of, apart from him just annihilating DBs at the Senior Bowl this week, which is just, it's almost unfair after a certain point. Yeah, he's someone who I'll probably have to dive in on after. There's a lot of tackles going. Kwity Paye from Michigan is one of my favorite players in this class, an edge rusher from Michigan. Obviously, Frank Clark has come out of there. They've had some pretty good, decent pass rushers come from the big house last couple of years, and he's definitely going to be the next one. He's got him going to the Lions at 21 with a mocked Stafford to Indy trade. I mean, the Colts traded away their first round pick last year to the Niners for DeForest Buckner. It would not surprise me if he did something similar this year, because Stafford is the biggest wild card in this, because he could change everything at pretty much all levels of this quarterback class, but also all levels of this first round, couldn't he? Because it's probably going to be a first round pick, which teams fire over to Detroit to get their long-term QB, Ben?
Yeah, it's probably an interesting question. Where would you rank Stafford on this list of QBs that you can draft in the first round? And I think, I think Stafford's absolutely brilliant. So I think if you're trading what if Indy got the 20th pick in the first round, 21st pick for a talent like Stafford, I think you'd be getting I think that's unbelievable value.
Yeah, I think I'll put him at. It might be a conversation for the Jaguars to look into, because with Urban Meyer as well, and then obviously Stafford is more. Yeah, that could be. They won't be, because the draft picks mean a weird amount to NFL GMs. And I think at the back end of the draft, one of the more interesting picks is the Jets' second pick, the pick they got for Jamal Adams from the Seahawks. And I think this should be what will be our next pod on this. Jeremiah's got Travis Etienne, the running back from Clemson, going to the Jets. If Najee Harris is surely the option here above Etienne, or where do you stand? Without going too deep, because
I haven't watched enough tape to. Yeah, I haven't watched enough tape to sort of have a definitive opinion, but of the bits I've seen, certainly the back end of this season, then I would be looking at Najee Harris over Etienne, I think. But like I say, I need to have a proper dive on both of them before.
Yeah, cool. I think that's everything. The quarterback class is very, very good for the most part, especially at the top end. Trey Lance is very jerseyable, unless he lands in the NFC West, obviously. This has been the Ped Pod CFB show. We are going to keep on doing these over the next few weeks and months. But massive thanks, Ben, for jumping on.
No problem.
And until next time, this has been the Ped Pod CFB show.